My name is Christian Owens. I am 34 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my mother sent me a text message that finally broke the last thread holding our relationship together. Christian, your father and I have been discussing the anniversary party. We think it is best if you do not attend. The guest list is exclusively high society. Judges, investors, partners from the firm. We don't want you to feel out of place, and frankly, we don't want to explain your situation to anyone. Let's catch up after the holidays. My situation. That is what they called my life. Before I tell you exactly what happened when I decided to show up anyway, and the shockwave it sent through the elite social circle of Boston, tell me where you are watching from in the comments. I read every single one, and it helps me feel a little less alone in this. I was standing in the middle of my apartment when that message came through. My apartment isn't like the pristine, sterile mansions my parents live in. It smells like sawdust, linseed oil, and old paper. There are blueprints rolled up on the dining table, and samples of Victorian crown molding are stacked on the floor. I looked at the cracked screen of my phone, my thumb hovering over the reply button. My hands are rough. They have calluses on the palms and scars on the knuckles from years of working with wood and stone. To my father, these hands are a sign of failure. To him, success looks like a manicure and a pen that costs more than a car. I didn't reply. I just tossed the phone onto the pile of architectural drawings. You have to understand, this wasn't new. For 10 years, I have been the ghost of the Owens family. I am the son who didn't go into finance. I am the son who didn't marry a debutante from a family with a summer home in the Hamptons. I chose architecture, and not the kind where you sit in a glass tower designing other glass towers. I chose historic preservation. I crawl into the bellies of 200-year-old buildings that are rotting from the inside out, and I save them. My father calls it playing contractor. My mother tells her friends I work in construction, usually with a pitying whisper, as if I haul cement for minimum wage. I walked over to the window. Down on the street, life was moving on. But in my head, I was replaying a decade of exclusions. No Christmas card photos for 10 years. When my brother Julian got married, I was placed at table number 19, next to the kitchen staff entrance, while Julian stood at the head table, glowing in his bespoke tuxedo, raising a glass of champagne that cost $300 a bottle. Then my phone rang. It was Julian. I knew exactly why he was calling. He wanted to make sure the message from Mom had landed. He wanted to twist the knife. "Hey, Chris," Julian said. He didn't wait for a hello. "Mom told me she sent the text. Look, don't make this a thing, okay?" "I'm not making it a thing, Julian," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "Good," he said. I could hear the sound of a car engine in the background. High-pitched, aggressive, probably his Ferrari. Or rather, the least Ferrari he likes to park in the driveway to impress the neighbors. It's going to be a heavy hitters crowd. Judge Harrison is coming. Some people from the Goldman Sachs board. We need everything to be perfect. You know how you get. You stand in the corner and look like you want to punch someone. It brings the vibe down. I haven't been to a family event in 3 years, Julian. How would you know what my vibe is? Exactly. He laughed. A hollow, sharp sound. Let's keep the streak alive. Besides, you probably can't afford the dress code. This black tie strictly. Not Men's Warehouse black tie. Real black tie. I looked at the closet door across the room. Inside, hanging in a garment bag, was a tuxedo from Savile Row in London. I had bought it 2 years ago when I was invited to speak at a preservation conference in Vienna. Julian didn't know that. Julian didn't know anything about my life. "Enjoy the party, Julian," I said. "I hope the Ferrari starts. It's a marvel of engineering, Chris. You wouldn't understand. Stick to your hammers." He hung up. I stood there in the silence of my apartment. The anger was there, a cold, hard knot in my chest, but there was also exhaustion. I was 34 years old, and I was still letting them make me feel like the little boy who couldn't do math fast enough. I walked into the kitchen and opened a beer. It was a Tuesday night. The party was in 3 weeks. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I would work through the weekend. I had a deadline coming up, anyway. But then my laptop pinged. It was an email notification. I walked over to the desk, brushing aside a layer of dust. The subject line made my heart stop. Confidential. 2024 AIA Gold Medal Selection Committee. I sat down. The chair creaked under my weight. I clicked the email open. Dear Mr. Owens, it is my distinct honor to inform you that the American Institute of Architects has selected you as the recipient of the 2024 Gold Medal in the Emerging Voice category. The committee was unanimous in its decision. Your work on the restoration of the Whitmore estate has been cited as a defining example of modern preservation excellence. I read it twice, then 3 times. The gold medal. This was the Oscar of the architecture world. This was the thing people spent entire careers chasing and never catching. And then I saw the signature at the bottom. Margaret Caldwell, Executive Director, National Trust for Historic Preservation. I leaned back, a strange, bitter laugh escaping my throat. Margaret Caldwell. The woman my parents had been trying to get a meeting with for 5 years. The woman whose social circle was so elite that my mother would trade a limb to be invited to her garden party. And she had just given me the highest honor in my profession. The irony was so thick I could taste it. My parents were throwing a party to celebrate their success, banning me because I wasn't elite enough, while the queen of the elite had just crowned me king. But that wasn't the biggest irony. The biggest irony was the venue. I looked at Mom's text again. The Whitmore estate. They had chosen the Whitmore estate for their anniversary. They had chosen the very building that I had spent the last 18 months of my life saving. The building where I knew every secret passage, every structural beam, every flaw, and every fix. They had rented my masterpiece to celebrate their exclusion of me. I looked at the date of the award announcement. It was scheduled to go public on the same night as their party. At 7:30 p.m., I took a sip of beer. The cold liquid didn't cool the fire starting to burn in my gut. They thought I was a failure. They thought I was an embarrassment. They thought I was invisible. I closed the laptop. I wasn't going to tell them. Not yet. If they wanted a show, if they wanted high society, if they wanted perfection, I was going to let them have it. But I wasn't just going to be a spectator anymore. To understand why this hurt so much, you have to understand the building. And to understand the building, you have to understand the 3 years leading up to that night. The Whitmore estate isn't just a house. It's a 150-year-old landmark mansion in the heart of Massachusetts. 3 years ago, it was a wreck. The roof had collapsed in the east wing. The basement was flooded. Developers were circling like vultures, waiting for the demolition permit so they could tear it down and build luxury condos. The Historical Society had given up. They didn't have the money, but the National Trust stepped in at the last minute. They needed an architect who was crazy enough to take it on, and cheap enough to make the budget work. That was me. I remember the first time I walked into the foyer. It smelled of rot and dead pigeons. The grand staircase was sagging. The famous hand-painted wallpaper was peeling in strips like dead skin. But I looked up, past the water damage, past the grime, and I saw the bones. I saw the soul of the place. I spent 18 months living and breathing that restoration. I didn't just draw plans. I was there every single day. There was a pair of massive oak doors at the main entrance. They were 12 feet tall, solid quarter-sawn oak, carved with intricate leaves and vines. They were black with a century of soot and varnish. The contractor wanted to replace them with replicas. It would be cheaper, he said. I said no. I spent 3 weeks on those doors myself. I used dental picks to clean the carvings. I hand-sanded the flat panels until my fingerprints were practically worn off. I remember coming home those nights, my hands bleeding, my back screaming in pain, covered in dust that wouldn't wash out. I missed family dinners. I missed Julian's birthday. Not that I was invited to much, but I stopped trying to reach out entirely. I was consumed. One afternoon, about 6 months into the project, my father called. It was rare for him to call. "Christian," he said, "no small talk. Your mother tells me you're working on some old house in the middle of nowhere. Is this what you went to grad school for? Manual labor. It's a preservation project, Dad?" I said, holding the phone with my shoulder while I inspected a piece of crown molding. "It's the Whitmore estate. It's significant." "Significant," he scoffed. "You know what's significant? A portfolio. A salary. Julian just made partner. He bought a summer house in the vineyard. That is significant. You're 30-odd years old and you're scraping paint. It's embarrassing." "I'm not scraping paint, Dad. I'm restoring history." "History doesn't pay the mortgage, Christian. Grow up." He hung up. I remember looking at the phone, then looking at the intricate plasterwork above me. It was beautiful. It was lasting. It was real. Unlike my father's approval, which was a moving target I could never hit. I finished the project under budget and ahead of schedule. When we unveiled it, people cried. Literally cried. Margaret Caldwell was there. She was a woman of few words, known for being terrifyingly critical. She walked up to the oak doors, my doors. She ran her gloved hand over the wood. She looked at me, her eyes sharp. "You did this?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "You saved the original grain," she observed. "Most people would have painted over it." "The wood had a story to tell," I said. "I just helped it speak." She nodded. That was it. Just a nod. But a week later, I got a handwritten note from her thanking me for my dedication to the truth of the structure. And now, 3 years later, my parents had rented this masterpiece. I knew exactly why they chose it. It wasn't because they appreciated the architecture. It was because Architectural Digest had just done a spread on it, without mentioning the architect's name yet. That was saved for the award issue. It was the It place. It cost $50,000 just to rent the hall for the evening. They were paying $50 grand to celebrate in the house I built, while telling me I wasn't good enough to step inside. I went to my closet and pulled out the old photo album I kept hidden in a shoebox. I opened it to a picture from 10 years ago. It was the last family vacation I went on. We were in Aspen. Julian was front and center, wearing a ski jacket that cost more than my first car, his arm around Dad. Mom was beaming. I was in the background, out of focus, loading the luggage into the trunk of the rental car. I looked closer at the photo. I looked unhappy. I looked defeated. I was 24 then, fresh out of architecture school, drowning in student debt because my parents refused to pay for a degree they didn't respect. Julian's MBA, of course, was fully funded. Inheritance is for those who protect the family legacy. My father had told me when I asked for help with tuition, "You're choosing a hobby. Pay for your own hobbies." I closed the album. The past wasn't just memories. It was a ledger, a balance sheet of slights and insults. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the balance was about to shift. I looked at the date on my watch. The party was tonight. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Aunt Patricia. She was Dad's sister, the only one in the family who occasionally treated me like a human being, though she was terrified of my father. "Christian, honey, I miss you. I know you can't be there tonight because of your health, but I'm praying for you. Get well soon." I stared at the screen. My health? What was she talking about? I typed back, my fingers trembling slightly. "Aunt Pat, what do you mean my health?" Her reply came 3 bubbles later. "Your mom told us about the rehab. She said you're at a facility in Vermont getting help for the addiction. She said it was brave of you to go." The phone fell from my hand onto the blueprint table. Addiction. They hadn't just uninvited me. They had assassinated my character. They had told the entire extended family, and probably all their high society friends, that I was a drug addict or an alcoholic, locked away in some rehab center. It was the perfect lie. It explained my absence. It garnered them sympathy, the poor, suffering parents dealing with the troubled black sheep. It made them look noble for supporting me, while simultaneously ensuring no one would ask why I wasn't there. Rage is a funny thing. Sometimes it burns hot and fast. But this was cold. This was ice. This was the kind of anger that sharpens your vision and slows down your heart rate. They wanted a story? Fine. I would give them a story. I looked at the tuxedo hanging in the bag. I looked at the Cartier tank watch on my wrist, a gift to myself after the Whitmore project, purchased with the bonus check I earned. I wasn't going to stay home. I wasn't going to hide. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the florist. Then I called the barber. Then I went to the garage. My parents expected the attic son to be hidden away in shame. Instead, the architect was coming home. The morning of the party, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Usually, family events filled me with anxiety. I would worry about my clothes, my car, my conversation topics. I would worry about disappointing them. Today, I felt nothing but a cold, driving purpose. I spent the morning reviewing the final structural reports for my next project, the governor's mansion. That was the other secret I was keeping. The National Trust wasn't just giving me an award. They were giving me a grant. $500,000 to lead the restoration of the most important government building in the state. At noon, Margaret Caldwell called me. Christian. Her voice was crisp, like dry champagne. I assume I will see you tonight? My heart skipped a beat. She didn't know. Tonight, Margaret? At the Whitmore, she said. I'm attending the Owens anniversary party. Dreadful bore, usually these social things, but Diane Owens has been pestering my office for months about a charity board position. And since it's at your building, and the announcement goes live at 7:30, I assumed you would be there. She paused. Margaret was sharp. She caught the hesitation in my silence. You are related to them, aren't you? Same last name. From Wellesley. Yes, I said. They are my parents. Well, she said. It will be a dual celebration then. I look forward to it. I have something for you. I'll be there, Margaret, I said. But, do me a favor? Don't tell them I'm coming. I want it to be a surprise. I love surprises, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. I hung up. Now there was no turning back. Margaret was expecting me. At 4 p.m., I started getting ready. I showered, scrubbing the smell of sawdust from my skin. I shaved with a straight razor, taking my time. I put on the tuxedo. It was midnight blue with a black satin lapel. It fit me perfectly, tailored to my broad shoulders and the muscles I'd built lifting beams and stone. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like the troubled son anymore. I looked like a man who owned the room. My phone buzzed. It was Julian again. Just a reminder. Stay away. We have security at the gate. Don't embarrass yourself. I didn't reply. I walked down to the garage of my apartment building. Most people in my neighborhood drove Hondas or Toyotas. But in the corner, under a custom canvas cover, sat my pride and joy. It wasn't a Ferrari. It wasn't a Lamborghini. It was a 1978 Porsche 911 SC Targa. Black on black. I had bought the chassis for $5,000 from a junkyard 6 years ago. It was a rusted shell. My father had seen it once and laughed. Another piece of junk for your collection, he'd said. I had spent every weekend for 5 years restoring it. I rebuilt the engine myself. I sourced original leather for the seats from Germany. I sandblasted the body and painted it by hand in a dust-free booth I built in the garage. It was flawless. It was a machine with a soul. It was worth more now than Julian's leased Ferrari, but only to people who knew what they were looking at. I pulled the cover off. The black paint gleamed under the fluorescent lights. I turned the key. The air-cooled engine roared to life with that distinctive, mechanical clatter that sounded like music to me. I backed out of the garage and hit the road. The drive to the Whitmore estate took 45 minutes. I took the back roads, winding through the tunnels of trees that were just starting to turn orange for autumn. I drove with the windows down, letting the cool air hit my face. I thought about the rehab lie. It was so calculated. It was a preemptive strike. They knew that if people asked, "Where's Christian?" the answer, "We didn't invite him because he's a carpenter," would make them look like snobs. But "he's in rehab" made them look like saints. It was cruel, and it was going to cost them everything. I thought about the divorce rumors surrounding Julian. Aunt Patricia had hinted at it. Julian and his wife, Elena, were the perfect couple on Instagram. But word was that Julian had gambled away their kids' college fund on risky crypto investments. Elena was furious. She was only staying for the appearance of things. The whole family was a house of cards. a beautiful facade with rotting timbers underneath. And I was the inspector coming to condemn the building. I turned onto the long, gravel driveway of the Whitmore estate. Security was indeed at the gate. A burly man in a yellow vest held up a hand. I rolled down the window. The engine idled with a deep, throaty purr. "Name?" the guard asked, looking at his clipboard. "Christian Owens," I said. He scanned the list. He frowned. "I don't see a Christian Owens on the guest list, sir." "Check under family," I said. "Or check under architect of record for the venue." He looked at me, then at the car. The car confused him. It wasn't the car of a gatecrasher. It was the car of a connoisseur. "One moment," he said. He radioed up to the house. "I have a Christian Owens here." There was a crackle of static. Then a voice I didn't recognize. "Let him in. Mrs. Caldwell is asking for him." The guard looked surprised. He stepped back and waved me through. Margaret. She had already started her work. I shifted into first gear and drove up the long, tree-lined avenue. And then there it was, the Whitmore estate. It was lit up like a jewel box. Warm, golden light spilled from the floor-to-ceiling windows. The limestone facade, which I had cleaned with toothbrushes, glowed white against the night sky. It was breathtaking. I parked my vintage Porsche right in the front row, wedged between a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom and a bright red Ferrari Julian's. My car looked smaller, lower, and infinitely cooler. It looked like a predator resting among cattle. I stepped out. The gravel crunched under my dress shoes. I buttoned my jacket. I checked my cuffs. I walked toward the massive oak doors. My doors. The last time I was here, I was wearing work boots and covered in sawdust. Tonight, I was walking in as a gold medalist. I put my hand on the brass handle, a handle I had polished myself, and pushed. The doors swung open. The sound of a string quartet and the murmur of 100 wealthy voices washed over me. It was time to face the music. The foyer of the Whitmore estate is designed to impress. It has a 30-foot ceiling, a dual staircase that curves like a ribbon, and a crystal chandelier that weighs as much as a small car. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Expensive perfume, old money, and the faint, underlying scent of beeswax polish. My polish. The party was in full swing. There were about 150 guests. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than a year of my mortgage payments. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. I stood at the top of the short flight of stairs leading down into the main hall. For a moment, no one noticed me. They were too busy admiring the architecture. "Look at this molding," I heard a woman to my left say. "It's exquisite. Diane has such an eye for venues." "I heard the restoration cost $12 million, her husband replied. "Worth every penny." "Who was the architect?" "Some firm from New York, I bet." I smiled to myself. Then I saw them. My parents were standing near the fireplace, holding court. My father looked stiff in his tuxedo, a scotch in his hand. My mother was wearing a silver gown, laughing a little too loudly at something Judge Harrison was saying. Julian was nearby, looking sweaty and nervous, glancing at his phone. I took a deep breath and started to descend the stairs. The sound of my shoes on the marble was rhythmic, deliberate. The first person to spot me was Elena, Julian's wife. She was standing near the bar, looking miserable. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. She nudged Julian. Julian looked up. His jaw literally dropped. He whispered something to my mother. She spun around. The glass of champagne in her hand tilted. I watched, almost in slow motion, as the flute slipped from her fingers. It hit the marble floor with a shatter that cut through the conversation like a gunshot. Crash. The room went silent. The string quartet trailed off. All eyes turned to the source of the noise, and then followed my mother's terrified gaze up to me. I didn't stop. I walked right up to them. The crowd parted for me. I was taller than my father, broader than Julian. In that moment, the dynamic shifted physically. "Christian," my mother hissed, her face pale. "What are you doing here?" She looked around frantically. as if expecting men in white coats to come chasing after me with a net. "Hello, Mother," I said, my voice projecting clearly in the silent room. "Hello, Dad." "Julian, you shouldn't be here," my father said, stepping forward, trying to use his boardroom intimidation voice, but it cracked. "We were told you were unavailable." "In rehab?" I asked. "Is that the word you're looking for?" A gasp rippled through the nearby guests. "Lower your voice," Julian snapped, stepping in. "You're making a scene. You're drunk, aren't you? Go back to your car before I call security." "I'm not drunk, Julian, and I'm not in rehab." I looked at Aunt Patricia, who was standing behind them, looking confused and hurt. "I never was. I was at work." "Work?" My mother laughed, a high-pitched, nervous sound. "Oh, Christian, please, don't embarrass us with your little construction stories. Not tonight. This is a celebration for serious people." "Diane," Judge Harrison interrupted. He was a formidable man with silver hair. "Is this your son? The one you said was indisposed?" "He is," my mother said quickly. "He's having an episode. He's delusional. We need to get him out." She reached for my arm to push me away. I didn't move. I stood like a statue. "I'm not delusional, Mother," I said. I looked around the room, making eye contact with the guests. "I'm just admiring the venue. It turned out well, didn't it?" "It's a beautiful building," Judge Harrison said, eyeing me curiously. "But what does that have to do with you?" "Everything," I said. My father moved to block me. "That's enough. Get out. Now." "Why, Dad?" I asked. "Are you afraid I'll dirty the furniture? Or are you afraid I'll tell them the truth?" "There is no truth," my mother shrieked, losing her composure entirely. "You are a failure, Christian. You are a manual laborer who plays with hammers while your brother runs a firm. We didn't invite you because you don't fit in. Look at these people. Look at this room. You don't belong here." The cruelty of it hung in the air. She had said the quiet part out loud. I looked at her. I didn't feel the sting I expected. I just felt pity. "You're right, Mom," I said softly. "I don't belong in your world, but you are standing in mine." Before she could answer, a voice cut through the room from the entrance. "Actually, Diane, I believe he belongs here more than anyone else." Everyone turned. Margaret Caldwell was standing there. She was wearing a black velvet gown and holding a microphone she had taken from the bandstand. She walked toward us, her heels clicking on the floor. She didn't look at my parents. She looked straight at me. "Margaret," my mother stammered, her social mask trying to reassemble itself. "I'm so sorry. My son, he's—" "Your son," Margaret said, her voice amplified by the speakers, "is the reason we are all standing here tonight." My father looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Margaret stopped next to me. She put a hand on my shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, addressing the room, "please forgive the interruption, but the timing is perfect. It is 7:30 p.m. She pulled an envelope from her clutch. "Many of you have admired the restoration of the Whitmore estate this evening. You've asked who was responsible for saving this historic landmark from demolition. The architect of record kept his identity quiet, preferring the work to speak for itself. But tonight, the American Institute of Architects has decided to speak for him." She opened the envelope. My mother stopped breathing. Julian looked like he was going to be sick. "I am proud to announce," Margaret said, "that the winner of the 2024 AIA Gold Medal for Excellence in Historic Preservation is Mr. Christian Owens." She handed me the letter. "And," she added, looking directly at my father, "he is the lead architect who restored this building. Every beam, every door, every window. This is his house." The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just quiet. It was a vacuum. The air had been sucked out of the room. Then, phones started to light up. Ding, buzz, chirp. The notification alerts rippled through the crowd like a wave. People were checking the news. The Architectural Digest article had just gone live. I could see the screens glowing in the dim light. They were looking at the article. They were looking at the photo of me, standing right where I was standing now, but in work clothes, holding a blueprint, looking confident and strong. "My God!" someone whispered. "It is him." My father's face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of gray and purple. He looked at Margaret, then at me, then at the room. He was a man who calculated value in seconds, and he just realized he had miscalculated everything for 30 years. "Christian?" he choked out. You did this?" "I tried to tell you, Dad," I said. 3 years ago, you told me I was playing contractor. You told me to get a real job. I didn't know," he stammered. "You didn't ask," I said. "But the rehab," my mother whispered, clutching her pearls. "The construction worker story." "Lies," I said. "Lies you told to make yourself feel better about being ashamed of me." Julian stepped forward, his face twisted in a snarl. He couldn't handle it. The spotlight was off him. The failure brother was the hero. "So what?" he spat. "So you fixed up an old house. Big deal. You're still broke. You're still driving that junk car. You're still nobody." Margaret Caldwell turned to Julian. Her expression could have frozen water. "Mr. Owens," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "The AIA gold medal comes with a significant prestige, but perhaps you understand numbers better. The National Trust has just awarded Christian a $500,000 grant to lead the restoration of the governor's mansion. His fee alone for the project is double your annual salary." She paused for effect. "And regarding his car, I saw the vintage Porsche 911 SC parked outside. If that is junk, then I suppose my collection is worthless too. It's a masterpiece." Julian looked like he had been slapped. Aunt Patricia stepped forward from the crowd. She was crying. "Christian, you're not sick." "No, Aunt Pat," I said gentle. "I'm fine. I've always been fine." She turned to my mother. "Diane, how could you? You told me he was on drugs. I've been lighting candles for him at church. You made us mourn him while he was out here winning medals. It was a misunderstanding." My mother tried to backtrack, but the walls were closing in. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. He stepped closer to my father. "Richard," he said, "you invited me here tonight to discuss the merger. You told me your family values were the bedrock of your success. You told me you were proud of your children." "I am," my father said quickly. "Look, Christian is." "You lied." The judge cut him off. "You lied about your son's health. You lied about his career. You stood here in a building he built and mocked him. If you treat your own blood this way, how do you treat your partners?" "Judge, please," my father pleaded. "The merger is off," Judge Harrison said. "And don't bother coming to the golf club on Sunday. I think you'll find your membership is under review." He turned to me and extended his hand. "Mr. Owens, an honor. This building is magnificent." I shook his hand. "Thank you, Judge." The floodgates opened. The guests, realizing the power dynamic had shifted, abandoned my parents. They swarmed me. "Mr. Owens, congratulations." "Christian, I need to talk to you about my summer home in Nantucket. Can I see the medal?" I was surrounded by handshakes and flashing cameras. I looked over the shoulders of the crowd. My parents were standing alone by the fireplace. No one was talking to them. They looked small. They looked old. Julian was pouring himself a drink with a shaking hand. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Margaret. "Well done," she whispered. "I think you've made your point." "Thank you, Margaret," I said, "for everything. You earned it, Christian. Talent cannot be hidden forever. It always finds the light." I looked at my parents one last time. My mother was weeping now, but it wasn't the fake crying she used to get her way. It was real tears of humiliation. My father was staring at the floor, a broken man. I realized then that I didn't need their apology. I didn't need their validation. I had surpassed them. The party didn't end. It just mutated. The celebration of my parents' anniversary died the moment the judge walked away. But the celebration of my award was just beginning. I tried to leave. I had made my point. But as I moved toward the door, Julian blocked my path. He had been drinking heavily in the 20 minutes since the announcement. His face was flushed, his tie crooked. "You think you're special?" he slurred. "You think because you fixed some windows you're better than me?" "Move, Julian," I said calmly. "No," he shouted. People turned again. "You ruined this night. You ruined everything. Dad is going to lose the merger because of you." "Dad lost the merger because he's a liar," I said. "And because he raised a son who doesn't know when to shut up. I have more money in my watch than you have in your bank account." Julian screamed. He grabbed my lapel. That was a mistake. I grabbed his wrist. My grip, strengthened by years of lifting oak beams and stone blocks, was like a vice. I squeezed. Julian gasped and dropped to his knees. "Let go," he whined. "Julian." It was Elena, his wife. She marched over. But she wasn't coming to save him. She looked furious. "Stop it, Julian," she yelled. "Stop humiliating us. He assaulted me." Julian cried, looking at his parents for help. But they were too shell-shocked to move. "He didn't touch you," Elena said. "You're a drunk. And you're a fraud." She turned to the crowd, her eyes wild. The facade of the perfect golden child was about to crack wide open. "You want to talk about money, Julian?" she shouted. Tell them about the college fund." "Elena, shut up," Julian hissed, panic replacing the anger in his eyes. "No," she screamed. "My parents set up a fund for our twins. $200,000. It's gone. He spent it all on crypto and sports betting. He lost it all." Gasps echoed through the hall again. This was the final nail in the coffin. "And the Ferrari?" Elena pointed to the driveway. "It's leased, and the lease is 2 months overdue. The repo men called the house yesterday." My father stepped forward, his face gray. "Julian, is this true? The college fund?" Julian looked down, defeated. I was going to make it back. I just needed a bridge loan. Dad, if you could just—" "Don't ask him for money," Elena laughed bitterly. "He mortgaged the summer house to pay for this party. Did you know that? They're cash poor. They're all show." The room was spinning. The secrets were pouring out like blood from a severed artery. My parents weren't just mean. They were broke. They were drowning in debt to maintain an image of wealth, while I, the failure, was the only one building real equity. I looked at my family. The father who mortgaged a house for a party. The mother who lied about a son's addiction to save face. The brother who stole from his own children. I felt a profound sense of disgust. "I'm leaving," Elena said. She took off her wedding ring and threw it at Julian. It bounced off his chest and rolled across the marble floor, the floor I had polished. "I'm taking the kids to my mother's. Don't come after us." She stormed out. Julian sat on the floor, sobbing. My mother was hyperventilating in a chair. My father was staring into the middle distance, seeing his legacy turn to ash. I walked over to my father. "Dad," I said. He looked up. His eyes were empty. "Christian." Don't," I said. "Don't apologize. You don't mean it. You're only sorry you got caught." I looked at my mother. I hoped the party was worth it. I turned and walked toward the door. Margaret was waiting for me. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I will be," I said. "I have work to do tomorrow. The governor's mansion won't restore itself." She smiled. I walked out into the cool night air. The valet brought my Porsche around. The engine roared to life, a deep, powerful sound that shook the ground. I saw the repo truck pulling into the driveway as I was leaving. They were coming for Julian's Ferrari. I shifted into gear and drove away. I didn't look back at the rearview mirror. There was nothing there worth seeing. 6 months have passed since that night at the Whitmore estate. Life has a way of rearranging itself very quickly when the truth comes out. I am currently standing on the scaffolding of the governor's mansion. The wind is cold up here, but the view is incredible. I can see the entire city of Boston. I have a crew of 40 men and women working under me. They don't call me the contractor kid. They call me Boss or Mr. Owens. The AIA gold medal sits on my desk in my new office. It brings in clients, sure, but the real reward is the work. I have a waiting list of 2 years for restoration projects. My parents' world, on the other hand, collapsed completely. The fallout from the party was swift. Judge Harrison wasn't bluffing. My father's firm lost the merger. Then the audit started. It turns out my father had been moving money around to cover Julian's losses. It wasn't illegal, technically, but it was unethical enough to force him into early retirement. They sold the house in Wellesley. They moved into a condo in a cheaper suburb. Julian is in actual rehab now for alcohol. Elena divorced him. She got full custody of the kids. I set up a new education trust for my niece and nephew. I put 10% of my governor's mansion fee into it. I'm the uncle they can rely on now. Aunt Patricia comes over for dinner every Sunday. She brings lasagna. We talk about everything except my parents. But the most surprising part? The text message I received last week. It was from my father, Christian. I saw the article in the Globe about the governor's mansion project. It looks impressive. Your mother and I are settling into the new place. It's small. We were wondering if you might have time to stop by. There are some cracks in the ceiling we'd like you to look at. Maybe give us a quote? I stared at the phone. Even now, after everything, he couldn't just say, I miss you or I'm sorry. He had to frame it as a transaction. He wanted a quote. He wanted his contractor son to come fix his house. He still didn't get it. He never would. I typed out a reply. Hi, Richard. I'm glad you're settled. My firm is fully booked until 2026. I can recommend a good handyman for the ceiling. His rate is $50 an hour. Best, Christian. I didn't send it immediately. I hesitated. Was I being too harsh? Was I being petty? Then I remembered the 10 years of missing Christmas photos. I remembered the rehab lie. I remembered him mocking my hands. I hit send. Then I blocked the number. It wasn't out of anger. It was out of self-preservation. You can't rebuild a house on a rotten foundation. Sometimes you just have to condemn the property and build somewhere else. I climbed down from the scaffolding. My foreman, a grizzly guy named Mike, walked up to me. Hey, Christian, he said. The limestone delivery is here. You want to check the quality? I'll be right there, Mike, I said. I walked over to the pallet of stone. I ran my hand over the rough surface. It was cool and solid. It was real. I looked at my watch, the Cartier tank. It was ticking steadily. My life is quiet now. I don't go to galas. I don't drive a leased Ferrari. I come home to my apartment, which I've finally finished renovating. I cook dinner. I listen to jazz. I drive my Porsche on Sundays. I am building a life that is my own. It is designed by me, built by me, and paid for by me. And for the first time in 34 years, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a disappointment. I see an architect. I wanted to share this story not to brag about my award, or to drag my family through the mud, though they did a good job of that themselves. I wanted to share it for anyone out there who feels like they are the wrong puzzle piece in their family. Maybe you're the artist in a family of doctors. Maybe you're the mechanic in a family of lawyers. Maybe you're just the quiet one in a family of screamers. I spent a decade waiting for permission to be myself. I waited for my father to say, good job. I waited for my mother to say, I'm proud of you. I thought if I worked harder, if I got a bigger award, if I made more money, they would finally see me. But the truth is, some people are committed to misunderstanding you. They need you to be small so they can feel big. They need you to be the failure so they can feel like a success. You cannot wait for them to give you your value. You have to build it yourself, brick by brick, day by day. My hands are still rough. I still have dust under my fingernails. And I have never been happier. Build something that lasts. Build a life that makes you proud when you close your eyes at night. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't appreciate the view, lock the door. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive those moments, but telling it feels like closing the final chapter on that part of my life. I hope this story touched you in some way, or gave you the strength to stand up for your own worth? Have you ever had a moment where you had to prove everyone wrong? Have you ever been the outcast who came back stronger? I want to hear your story. Please share it in the comments below. Let's create a community here where success is defined by character, not by titles. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Until next time, keep building.